Welcome everybody to the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card reading. Today's reading, I'm delighted to say, is part of a collaboration. I did do a community post about this the day before it is being published to let my viewers and subscribers know about it, and so did my collaborator Odessa, the lovely Odessa from Odessa Moll Mystic Intuitive Healer channel. Odessa contacted me recently and said, was I interested in potentially collaborating? And I went to her channel and pretty much immediately decided yes, I was, because she does brilliant readings on very similar sort of topics to the sort of things that I like to look at and do readings on. I love the way she reads, very, very positive and great upbeat energy, and sort of has an infectious sort of enthusiasm, which I find really lovely to watch, but also goes into great depth. There's a lot of knowledge and wisdom in her readings. So really excited to do this collaboration with her. And what we want to do is look at almost the progression from past life to current life to future life. So my side of the coin is, how is your current life helping you prepare for your next life, and what might your next life look like, and so forth, and how can you get the best outcomes and your highest good out of that. And Odessa is looking at how has your most recent past life or past lives impacted your current life, and how understanding that can help you get the most out of this life. So it may well be, if you're linear like me, I'm a very linear thinker, if you come to this one first because you either come to this channel normally or it's the one that came up in a recommended feed or something, you may want to go and watch Odessa's first and then watch mine, just because there's that progression, but you don't have to. It's completely up to you. You do you. But either way, I really, really recommend, if you've come to this and you enjoy it and you're intrigued about that whole progression, as I say, from past life through to future life, definitely check out Odessa's readings as well. And if you've come from there because you're one of Odessa's viewers and subscribers, welcome to the channel. I hope that this meets your expectations and gives the other half of the reading to you. So it really is a kind of a karmic adventure, this particular collaboration I'm very excited about. And I actually thought, sometimes people have asked me about what this is, because it sometimes is shown, and I actually thought this is the ideal video to talk about it, because it's actually a dragon. I love dragons. I'm just going to show you it. This is my dragon that I always have watching over my readings. So, and to me the dragon represents many things: power, creativity, all of those sorts of things. I think protection. It also represents to me the Ouroboros, so the concept of the snake swallowing its own tail, the concept of the karmic cycle. So I thought this is the ideal one to have shown that. For anybody who wondered what that is, I do have other dragons sitting around as well, but that's my main one that I've had pretty much since I was a teenager. So it's a exciting thing for me to always have it there, and I just thought I'd show it. Okay, so now we talk about the selection of the readings. So Odessa and I both decided we wanted to do the same number of readings. So we're doing 3 readings for this collaboration, because some people like to choose a particular number. And so if you decided you wanted to do reading 2 here, then it may be that you want to do reading 2 there. So if we have the same number of readings, that's available to you if that's how you choose your pile. There may be other ways that you do. And there's a logic to the cards here that I want to talk through for those that this might help choose. I mean, you can just meditate in and choose whatever you resonate to. You can go to more than one reading. But the logic that I have here, why I wanted to use cards that are about astrology, is that I have a personal theory that where your South Node is tells you a bit about your most recent past life, the house in particular that it's in, but also the sign. The North Node, because we're heading towards that, tells us a bit about what our next life is likely to be like. Again, the house and the sign. And your sun is the life path in this life that actually prepares you to go from the past into the future. And it's just a personal theory. There may well be astrologers, I don't know, who have already expounded on exactly that theory, and if so, I'm not trying to sort of claim anything as only mine, but I haven't read it anywhere. But to me it seems to be a sort of logical way of looking at things if you believe in reincarnation. So what I thought was I'd use houses from the chart. This will be one of 2 cards from this particular deck, and later in the reading there will be other astrology. So it doesn't have to be sort of bound to this, and whatever the other card even at the beginning may take it in a much more nuanced and different direction. But in either this life or what you might be thinking of for your next life, it might be that the houses, what they represent, might resonate for you. So I thought it could be a potential way if the imagery or the numbers or just meditating didn't sort of like make you find what you wanted. So the first house, which is for pile number 1, is a house that is about how you appear to the world. It's a house about your sort of being on the center stage potentially, being sort of driven and ambitious potentially. It's all about you being authentically you and creating your sort of persona and aligning that so that you are who you really want to be in the world at whatever level that is. The 10th house is typically for people who have major career ambitions, want to be in some way involved in the powers of the world and the structure of the world and all of those sorts of energies. And the 12th house is a very spiritual, very deep psychological, very sort of mystical sort of house. So I felt like it represented 3 different types of energies for either this life or the next life. The personal presence, being on the stage, the being in the powers of the world, the very spiritual, very mystical sort of path. But as I say, there could be very strongly nuancing energy with the other card from this particular deck in this reading, and there are other cards that at the beginning we're going to be looking at a total energy for the current life and the next life that will nuance this considerably. So don't feel, oh, if I don't care about 10th house things, I can't possibly go to pile 2, because in fact that might just be saying that this is more a vocation rather than a career thing with 10th house and so forth. Or it might be that it's more an energy that is about what you are actually bringing to this particular life, and the next life might be different and so forth. So don't feel constrained in that way. But beyond that, that is the energies that will be in these readings, and the intent in the reading to start with is what is the current life and the next life looking like as a map. We'll drill into what that really looks like with tarot, and then look at Spirit's advice about how to go from this life to the next life, both in sort of 3D and spiritual ways to bring your highest good. So that's a lot of verbiage. I'm sorry, but it was just worth sort of saying so that you understood why I'd chosen these particular cards. As always, you do you choose what resonates and calls to you. When you know what reading or readings you want to go to, and as I say, by all means go to more than one if you want. The timestamps as always are in the description box below, and I'll see you there. Welcome pile 1 to your reading. So what I did with these, there were all the cards that were under the first house that brought you to the reading. But with these particular cards, the ones that are around the astrology for this part of the reading, I actually shuffled them amongst themselves a number of ways and then laid them out. So it could have been that the first house ended up in the future, which is what these cards are, but it ended up in the current life part of the reading. So this was to make sure that whatever that energy was, it sat in the right place for the time frame that we're looking at. So this is the first part of looking at current energies in your life that help prepare you to be what you are going to be in the future, and also to have as happy as possible and successful as possible a life at the moment. There's also some other cards which I will lay out just for space. I couldn't put them all out, but we'll have a look at them in the context of both of these things in terms of sort of 3D career and also archangel energy as well. But to start with, just to give a sense about what we're looking at here, and it may help you if you are trying to work out if you've come to the right reading. Your current life at the moment, the sort of things that are occurring for you that will help you to become who you are now and also who you are evolving into for a next life, seem to be a combination of a lot of spiritual energy and spiritual concern, and somehow that is part of who you are. So the first house is important to you in this life. You are meant to be seen in some way, or the way that you present yourself is very much connected to the rest of this energy and how you're developing. You, in a sense, in this life are your product or your manifestation. There is something about how you are in the world. And there is a very strong sense of the enjoyment of the world, of the abundance of the world, of the material side of the world with Taurus. and a connection, I think, very much to the earth, because we have the Pleiadian energy here, and I wanted to put in cards from this deck because it connects to interdimensional realms and what might be playing out on that level in terms of life. And for you, I think there is a real deep sense of the importance of the earth, the importance of the good life, the importance of unconditional love, enjoyment, all of those things, but there's a very strong mystical side as well. So what I get in this sense is someone who is calibrating and balancing a mystical sense, a connection with the divine, a spiritual sense, with being in the world, and being in the world in a way. The Pleiadians are a high order race that are actually trying to help, through channeling and things like that, mankind move towards the ascended sort of space, which will always be, to some degree, a caring for the earth, a caring for what is in the material, but a mystical, a much more connected mystical energy. And this is part of who you are, and it's how you are meant to be seen in the world. So even if you are in a conventional job, there is a side of you that will look at these balances. What is sort of almost morally and spiritually and ethically important? How do we live the good life in the sense of being a good human being? But also, how do we responsibly and with enjoyment and with positivity live the good life on a very material level? And there's something in this life, if you focus on that, that will really help you for the next. And it's very interesting, because one of the things that instantly connects for you across the two lives is that here we have the Blue Avians, and they are all about philosophy, releasing karma, and mysticism. So you are going to be a mystic in this life and in the next in some form. That's always going to be important to you. But the evolution that I see here is you are experiencing it to some degree, and experiencing the balance of that to some degree in this life. Next time, it's so that you can communicate it and you can help bring balance to others. And it's in a creative sort of way. You could be a writer, you could be a dramatic artist, because you could be developing the capacity to present yourself personally and be your own brand in this life that helps you be even more of an artist. But what we see over here is a move from looking at the material to the intellectual to the area of the mind. It's like this time round you live what you believe. This next time around you communicate it in some way, through art, through communication, through the sort of the intellect or the philosophy in some way. And it's all about balance. It's like you live the balance here, and then you create something in the next life. So my feeling about this is that it's very likely with this that you could in the next life, be a sun sign in an air sign, so Libra or Gemini or Aquarius, and that's part of the life path. So it's possible that in this one that you have a North Node in an air sign. You don't have to for this to be working out, but I would say in this life, if that theory holds, it's probably something more earthy that's your sun sign and so forth. So it's that kind of move from living the experience, connecting to the spiritual, but living the experience in the 3D, to communicating what you learnt. So I think you'll learn a lot in this life. I think this life is about really walking the talk, and then later on being able to, in the next life, create yourself from it, connect and help others, bring people to a higher order of understanding in some way. So let's have a look at the other cards. So it's a couple of cards around sort of like very much 3D sort of career energies around this, and then also an archangel card for each. Oh, look, there you go, Gaia. Recognition, okay. That very much fits with these sort of energies, definitely. And then, oh, that's interesting. Okay, you're definitely going to take your thing out into the world. But I think one of the things, you see, it's interesting we have envy with that. I'll do the archangels in a second. Because here in this life, it looks like you're very, very focused in some way. You could be working in environmental issues. You could care about, the sustainability of the earth and so forth in some way. Or you have a very creative thing. You could even could be creativity through, family and children and all that sort of thing as well. But it's very, very earthy, and you will get recognition for it. You'll get recognition, I think, for the mystical approach that you take, the manifestation approach and so forth. And on the basis of that, you start to know, I think your soul knows that you were onto something about how these things connect and the merging of the material, I think, with the mystical, so that in the next life you are taking that message out, as I say, possibly as an entertainer, or certainly in a way that is entertaining. So you don't necessarily have to be on centre stage, but with the first house here, you may well be getting comfortable with being in the centre stage, so that you can get a wider platform potentially in the next stage. But it will bring some envy to you. This is why it is wonderful that you have the philosophy to underpin what you're doing, and the balance. You will know what this is. You will know why it's occurred. I don't think it's going to be a problem for you. I just think it's sort of an inevitable thing, because you will be taking your message out to an even larger audience in some way. Okay, what archangel energy will help you in this life and the next? So Michael, wow, to Metatron. Yeah, and that very much fits with this. Michael is all about strength. Mercury is connected to Michael, which is a natural sort of connection into your next life. But this is about the strength. This is about physical strength. It's about sustainability. It's about all those sort of issues, and having the sense of self and the connection to the divine, as I say, to be able to get that recognition for what you do. It's a very strong life, actually. If you are not at this point feeling you have that, there's a key in here around connecting your spiritual things to very manifest material things in some way. And in a way that is sustainable and that is unique with the first house, something that's very true to you at whatever level it is. So there's that energy for you, taking you to the connection, which is the mysticism operating, definitely, but I think also connecting that idea on a larger scale. But it is still grounded with the earth. So it's interesting in terms of like astrological energies. Your astrological energy here with Michael is connecting to your next life and preparing you. Metatron is grounding you back and reminding you, probably through the Akashic records, of what you learnt here, so that you don't go so much into the mind that it gets too philosophical, or so much into the creativity that it doesn't ground. So I think there's a lovely balance here. And this life is about, both lives are about mysticism and spirituality, but this life is about the material, and the next life is about the philosophical and the creative. So that's pretty exciting. So let's have a look with tarot in a little bit more detail. So what I want to look at first is, what is your mission in this life? Then how does that prepare you for the next? And then lastly, what do you see or don't see that could help you in that transition from one to the other? So I'm using the Dream Vision Tarot because it's kind of futuristic, so I thought it sort of fitted with futuristic and spiritual, so I thought it fitted with this particular type of reading. So firstly, what is your mission in this life that is preparing you for the next life? Okay, so firstly, the really interesting thing about this is the sort of really strong sort of cards to me that talk about philosophy and the mind in some way, given that you are moving towards a life where the mind, the communication skills, the philosophy is going to be more front and center than it possibly is in this life. So it really is suggesting that there's something you're doing in this life that prepares you for it. What I think it is about, partly it is about stepping into the first house. It may be that quite a few of you have come here and thought, oh my God, the last thing I want to be is on center stage. And how could I possibly become an entertainer or an artist? But there is in fact something in this life which is about, there's something that you can bring spiritually, your message, the balance, maybe through a business with the Nine of Pentacles that demonstrates this, and that does give you the recognition that you deserve, and it makes you more comfortable with this. You may be a little bit concerned about the judgments of others. This may be why you have tended to sort of pull back and be behind the scenes. But this life is meant to let you know that what you're bringing through is really true and very balanced, and will get the recognition. It's important for you to move towards first house things in this life, to work out what is your statement, who you are in some way, and not worry about that, to free yourself from whatever imprisonment you might have about wondering about it. With the Eight of Swords reversed, it's a wonderful sign that you can do that. It's also a sign that you're heading towards mental freedom, which will be a very big part of the next life. And the Hanged Man says having a different perspective on things, getting unstuck in some way through something material. This looks to me like there is a process for you in your career, in your business life, or in something material, something creative and material. Could even be family, though this is a very independent card. So I suspect even within a family, you have your own, you walk your own walk, so to speak. But it is a process, a life that is about freeing yourself from the judgments of others and the perspectives of others, because you prove something, you achieve something in this life. So, and you may well be on your way to doing that already, but if you aren't, that is what you are meant to do. And so backing yourself and understanding that there is something unique that you are bringing to the table. It's a really important thing, actually, to be able to connect the spiritual with the material, because we're here for a reason. You know, we're not just here to sort of sit and meditate and you know, connect with the divine. I mean, that's wonderful to do that, but we're here for a reason. Like, the divine isn't, you know, doing things on a whim. They will have us here for a reason. So I think it is really communing in and working out what that is. So your life mission is about freeing yourself from worrying about what other people think and from really old-fashioned stuck ideas to come out and develop something that is truly you in a very material way. Okay, so let's have a look at how does this mission help prepare you for your next. And I think that we've got a little bit of an idea of that already, because I think it is about preparing you to be on a bigger stage, which is the next life. And, you know, if, you know, it could even start, you could even start to be on a broader stage in this life, but I just think the next life, it's at a whole other level again. So let's see how this current life can help you prepare for your next life. Okay, so what I'm getting very strongly with this pole one is that this sort of energy around other people's points of view, you may have had very strict sort of like ideas about what a good life was, sort of said to you in your family or in your education or something, or even a situation you're in at the moment. But there is certainly something about freeing yourself to be able to make decisions. So this life, for you to be able to express this balance that you have innately, that I suspect is not common in your family or the workplace you're in or whatever it is, this is to get you to the point where you're comfortable to make decisions, because it looks like at the moment, and this is because I think you are going to lead out with a concept and an idea, and really with Mercury and Libra together, how to make decisions quickly but in a fair and balanced way. So there's something there. You may, in fact, with whatever your creative, artistic or career, whatever it is that you do, philosophical thing, you will probably be helping people to free themselves from outdated concepts and be able to make decisions easier. So this is why I think there's actually a challenge. I think for most of you, you probably did think, oh my God, you know, do I have to be centre stage? Oh, you know, how can I do this? You know, how, you know, what new idea do I have? But you will do this. The more that you think about that, like how you would present yourself in terms of your mysticism and material things, you will be able to start to walk that talk, as I say. And in doing it, it prepares you to do it on a bigger scale and to help other people do it. So it's a sense of freeing energy and freeing creative energy. Many of you may not have thought of yourselves as creative. If you do, you may have felt that there were blocks and you know, like, what does the industry think? You know, why is it I get stuck? This is all to prepare you for, as I say, a very big stage, I think, in one form or another in your next life. And it's also to make you work out what it is that you love. What really do you love? I mean, the mystic can sometimes get so caught up in loving the divine that they forget to love, you know, the people around them, and they forget to love the earth and all of those sorts of things. It can be a bit of a lonely path. I think this grounding to the material here helps you work out what you love, because next time, as I say, you are going to potentially get some envy, you are going to potentially have those sort of issues, and you're going to be doing a lot from a philosophical point of view and an artistic point of view. But it's important to know what you love when you do that, so that the mind doesn't overtake the heart, so that it remains in balance. This life is about the balance of the spirit and the material. The next life, I think, is about the balance of the mind and the heart. And this is how working out what you love and the choices you want to make. Because the Page of Cups, if it was the right way around or upright, would be saying, you are starting to really articulate and work from your heart and what you love. With the reverse, it's saying this is part of the thing you have to decide to do what you love, rather than what maybe society is prescribing to you. So let's also ask what you do see and don't see. So I'm going to do 3 cards for what you do see at the moment about this life that could help for the next, and then 3 cards for what you don't see. Okay, this is pretty clear, I think. What you do see, you're unconventional. You know that you have a mystical or spiritual path, and it's not necessarily a traditional religious one. You may have been brought up in a traditional religious environment, but that may or may not be the case, but you know that you are different. You know that you're unconventional. You also know that you need to connect to your heart. You know that is a really core thing for what you want to do, and that it is part of the trajectory. So you've got a sixth sense for where you're heading, and you are thinking about that, which is excellent. And you also know that there's quite a bit of hard work to do. With the 10 of Wands reversed, that suggests, it is coming out of a period of hard work, but I think that you can see that there is a lot of hard work to do, but that in doing that, you relieve a burden of the past. So you can kind of see on a material level how following the sort of mystical path is going to help and so forth. But you are also aware that there's almost like a physical and energy level that you have to deal with, which I think may be what brings you towards the earthy energy. I think that might be part of the pathway. What you don't see is how much you are birthing a new philosophy and a completely new way of doing things. It's like you do this and you think it's the most logical and sensible thing to do, and it probably is. But something is birthing out of that in the next life is going to be very new. You don't yet see what that is, and that probably makes sense because it's the next life. But there is something very unique you're bringing in, and something that, well, you don't see to what degree you are hiding your sun. You're not following the first house and so forth, and how strong you really are, and how strong in this next life you're going to be once this experience of, as I say, walking the talk almost creates this new creation later. But you underestimate yourself a lot, and you don't know how original you are. For all that you know that you're not conventional, you don't know how truly original you are. And you are moving to something very original. Okay, so let's start looking at these things with some other oracle cards. So firstly, I want to use the Heart Code oracles around relationships, career, lifestyle, and wellness for each thing. So the sort of energy around this current life and the sort of energy around the future life, to also give you some more information to think about how to use that energy. So we're going to start with relationships, and we'll just go through each of the different aspects before we start to look at some spiritual sorts of information as well about the 2 lifetimes. So in terms of relationship, the current life and the future life. So what's happening here that is going to bring you to the future life? What is it that you would potentially be enjoying or facing as a challenge in either of these things in either life? So current life, assertive, okay, and future life, judgment. All right, so this tells me, and this is in all relationships, and remember, you are going to get some envy. There is going to be envy in your next life, but that's a sign of success, so don't worry too much about that. But this is why it's important that you actually free yourself from worrying about the judgments of others, so that when that occurs, you can understand what it is. There is something in terms of one or more of your relationships in this life. It might just be a relationship pattern where you are being asked to become a little bit more assertive, to do a little bit more of the first house, because it prepares you for the next life and for the message that you're meant to take out into the world. So not sort of stepping back and letting conventional things rule you or other people's judgments rule you, because there will be judgment energy around you in the next life, but you will be strong enough with all these cards to deal with that, and you will not be concerned by it. And you will also be able to judge in a very balanced way with library yourself and judge what are the proper and appropriate relationships to have, the ones that are supportive, the ones that are not envious, and so forth. You'll have a very clear idea of that. Let's have a look at career. Okay, for this life. Advance, yeah, you're definitely going to do so. You're going to be successful with that Nine of Pentacles. If you run your own business or you're looking for your career, you're going to get to a level where you have a lot of autonomy and you can really bring some of this in the next life. Okay, frustration. So I do think that this will be around the sort of judgments and so forth. This is to prepare you. It's to understand when those judgments come and so forth, where that could cause frustration. I do believe you're going to be very successful in this life because you're going to be very unique. But what happens with unique people when they're taking their message out is sometimes they will hit frustration. I think the sense I get from that is that in this next life, one of the reasons you'll move towards a sort of more artistic, more entertaining, or that kind of thing, is that conventional careers will just not work for you. You are meant to be your own business, your own brand, the stuff that you've developed here. So I don't think it's sort of meant, but I think that what you're doing here and understanding that at a soul level will help you understand this and not have the frustration. So you move quicker towards what it is that you're meant to do in the next life. So let's look at lifestyle and wellness. So starting with lifestyle. Guarded. Yeah, see, I feel that a lot of you you probably thought, oh, that's horrific, I don't want to be out on centre stage. But you say you are guarded around people because you've seen a lot of stuff around decisions and judgments or whatever. But it's okay because I think that just protects you as you advance. And then moving into perspective. Yeah, because you'll have a higher order perspective. This whole experience of starting to make yourself your own personal brand will give you the perspective that you need and the perspective to deal with those sort of things as well too. It's inevitable, as I say, for anybody who's a creative or unique to have some frustrations around career, but they're the thing that it's like the grit that the oyster has that creates the pearl. So let's also look at wellness, sort of well-being as well. Mental health. It's the one that I just don't think works. Sometimes I just get a sense like Spirit goes, no, shuffle again, Helen. Okay. And treatment. Okay. So I think all this is at the moment is that when you're going through this and you're working out how to be assertive and when you're feeling guarded compared to assertive, mental health is sort of a thing to sort of be aware of. It doesn't mean that you've necessarily got a major mental health issue or whatever, but I think that there is a sense in this with all the earth that health is part of this in some way. So it's getting that balance of assertive and guarded and advancing and sort of not burning out. So I think it's just saying in this life, one of the things that's important is to always make sure that you feel that balance yourself, because I think you're going to be an example of it. And mental health is often really about the balance of what we feel spiritually, what we believe, what we do, what our experience of life is. Over here, treatment just probably suggests that, on occasion, going to a spa or whatever. I don't think that's a major big issue at all. But if you are feeling frustrated, that might be a time when you, as I say, do go to a spa or go and get a massage or something. I think it's not telling us anything too important at this point. May also be saying that you get perspective when you sort of, as I say, sort of zen out or something like that. Because this life is going to be, as I say, pretty fast, probably pretty much on centre stage. There's a lot of mental energy. That's probably also why the mental health thing is very important at this point. You don't want to be moving into this sort of a life where there's a very strong emphasis on philosophy and the mind without having brought everything into balance and having that kind of sense of, yes, there's the heart as well, there's the spirit as well, there's the body as well, all that kind of thing. Okay, so to also give some advice, I wanted to look at things that move more into the spiritual, but sort of like gradually. So I'm starting, in fact, with a deck that is about sort of sacred places in the world, because it doesn't mean that in this life and next life these are the places you have to be, but the energies around them I think will be important to this. So it's sort of about being at home in yourself. So I'm just going to pull a card from that deck for each of these things, the current life and the next life. Lake Baikal and Mount Kalash. Okay, so Lake Baikal is in Russia, which is sort of interesting given when, at this point, if you're watching this particular video when it's being done, which is sort of in mid-April 2022, it's sort of like kind of politically sort of interesting with Russia. So this may be a little bit of a sort of thing around the sort of broader caring for people and caring for the outcomes and the sort of bigger macro political sort of issues. It might be tilting towards that to some degree. Could also be that that is a country that you either visit, live in, or you have some sort of connection to. Otherwise, the energy of this particular place, it says, I can be independent and successful. Yes, you can. I can be alone and not lonely. Being different can be a source of power. There is a magic in the world and I can perceive it. And yes, you can. And it's a magic in the world. There is something about you being independent, standing separate to the judgments of others, living your own brand, as I say, and bringing, therefore, through your mystical sort of magic and your manifestation. I do think for most of you, once you sort of get on this pathway, if this resonates for you, you are going to be very abundant in this life. That's going to be part of what you learn. It's almost like the keys to the kingdom. Then Mount Kalash is in Tibet. So all that sort of like mystical energy again, but it is kind of almost a little bit more detached and more of the mind. This says, I am sacred, I am divine, I have humility, I can start anew. Yes, and you will bring in something new. There's something that you will learn in your manifestation in this life that prepares you to really bring in something new that I think helps others. And as I say, it could come out in some sort of entertainment and art. It could come out in philosophy, but there's something like that. And again, this may be Tibet, may be something that you're drawn to, or a place that you live or you visit in your next life. Okay, so next we want to get a bit more astrology. So I'm going to use a different astrology pack. I said I was going to use it a bit in both. So again, some astrology energy around what can you do to prepare in this life for the next life, and then in the next life, what does that look like and what could you achieve? So we're using a different astrology deck for this. So firstly, in this current life, what helps you prepare for the next life? Air, okay. Fire. And Mercury, because you've got Mercury over here. It makes a lot of sense because a lot of what you are going to do in this world, as I say, in this life is around the sort of mystical and the heart, and it is about the earthy side of things, but not forgetting the mind, not forgetting the creativity, the passion and all that sort of thing, and not forgetting how you would communicate this, which is kind of picking up a bit of the first house in a way. To prepare for this next time round is to think about, even if you don't want to do it necessarily so much in this life, but to think about how would you communicate creatively and passionately into the next life. And then for the next life, waxing crescent, setting intentions, 12th house, the mystical stuff, the psychic and so forth, a new moon, yeah. This is setting intentions with waxing crescent and the new moon with planting what you desire. There is something new you're bringing in. And it's very, very mystical and very, very psychic. It's probably why it's connecting to Tibet as well, I think. So I think you will be, philosophical, you'll be on a world stage, you'll be a writer, you'll be an entertainer, you'll be something like that. And you will have to deal with envy and judgment and some frustrations around whether people understand what you do at first, because it will be very new. But it will be deeply, deeply spiritual and deeply, deeply aligned. So this is all about developing the sense of self that allows you to have that fortitude to do the new, because you're going to do something new in the next life. Okay, so what we're also going to do is we're just going to use 3 different sort of ancient sort of spiritual traditions to see, again, the sort of energies between. We're going to do Celtic, we're going to do Norse, and we're going to do Egyptian, and then we will bring it all together with the Astro Chakra cards. So firstly, Celtic information on the current life and then the future life. Current, the green woman, feminine, nature, oneness. Yes, there's something about nature with you. Very, very aligned to nature and the earth. Moving to sacred waters, deep healing, emotions, pilgrimage. Okay, that makes me feel of Tibet as well too. I think you'll travel a lot in the next life. travel a lot. And I think you, in seeking out the new and in spreading the word of the new, you'll be on some form of pilgrimage. But Sacred Waters also says to me, you don't have to worry too much that you'll be too much in your head, because the heart, the watery energy will also be there with you. So that's really lovely. This very grounded energy, and then this very, very transformative and traveling sort of energy. Speaking of travel, let's have a look at the Viking Oracle, because this is sort of the Vikings were always out and conquering new worlds in various ways. So let's see the sort of energy that this has to offer for the present and the future life. Well of the Weird, Laguz. So it's very interesting to get Laguz, because that is about sort of flow, water, energy, and then we've got the sacred waters. So it certainly is, again, doubling down on the fact that what you do in this life will prepare you also to bring the heart and flow and flexibility in, and all of those sorts of things. And very creative, very transformative energy, very much the new. The interesting thing about the Well of the Weird here, when you are in the material world manifesting, is a very strong manifestation sense here, is this is a well, again, of water, at the base of the tree of life in Norse tradition, and it is about destiny. So there is some destiny here, but it gives the message that we create our own destiny. So being ourselves, the first house, how that manifests in the world, what we can create, and then having our own vision, which takes you to this sort of like more expansive sort of life, very, very clearly sort of said in this. And you have a lot of choice in this. That's what it's saying. You have a lot of choice about who you are and how you do your destiny. Okay, and lastly, let's get ancient Egyptian wisdom for the current and future life. Sobek, rest and endings. Amun-Ra, wow. Okay, so this to me suggests that there are things, as you become more and more who you are, you will partly need, this is why we've got the sort of mental health thing too, partly need to sort of like take a break every once in a while, because you're going to be sort of doing a lot, and doing a lot that's material and uses energy. So rest and endings there. But I think it's also saying that you are breaking certain karmic cycles, certain karmic limitations, particularly around philosophy and belief in this life, to create who you are. And then we move to miracle creation, very strongly the creative artist, philosopher, bringing a lot of light and a lot of sun and a lot of energy to the message that you have. So very, very powerful life you're moving into, actually. But this feels like it's on the microcosm in whatever you do and getting everything in balance. This feels like it's on the macrocosm. Okay, so to finish off, I'm going to pull 3 Astro Chakra cards for each again, because I find this is a really nice way to synthesize the energy of a reading. So this is the sort of last piece in the puzzle about how in this life you prepare for the next. So in this life, communication, spirituality, and intuition. That doesn't surprise me with the mystic, that you would get those. And again, we've got Mercury. There is something about the message even in this life that will be the prototype, I think, for what it is that you do on a grander scale next time. And then in the next life, we have power, the Amun-Ra. Intuition again, and love. Okay, so in this current life, the chakras that are most being activated to prepare you for your next life are your third eye chakra, your crown chakra, so all the mystical, telepathic, psychic energy, and your throat chakra, what you say and to whom. It doesn't mean it has to be massively on the world stage this time around, unless you want to, but I think you're going to do something even bigger next time around if that's the case. But there is something about, once you've got everything in balance, communicating it, speaking out, and accepting the emotions that you feel in this process of doing that. And again, we have Mercury. Like, Mercury is really strong for you. Expanding knowledge, learning all that you can in this life to prepare yourself to create whatever the new is. And then in the new life, your sense of self, your power in the world, some of it is from the moon, from the emotions, from the water. There is something there. It's very strongly air, but it's also strongly water. And it's very much, again, connected to your intuition, to your psychic energy with the third eye, and that's the moon there as well. So that's a really interesting thing. We've got a doubling up of Mercury here, doubling up of the mental energy and the communication. We've got a doubling up of the heart here. And then we have the fourth chakra, which is about the heart and about love. And that's where you reconnect with the world in a much broader sense and bring your individual truth. So I think there's a really interesting trajectory for pile 1 here. I think that you're going to be doing something very balanced and very interesting in this life, very material, very much about abundance. The next life, you're taking something out to entertain, but through entertaining, teach, or you don't even have to entertain. It could be just artistic, teaching, philosophy, taking people forward in some way that really balances the heart and the intuition in a beautiful way, but connects it also in a way that can be communicated and which also touches the mind. So I hope that that resonates for you, pile 1, because I think we need people like you. And I hope that you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And I do definitely hope that you go and watch Odessa's reading as well and sort of see what was the precursor to this point, because it would be fascinating to see that and how much it relates also to the energy here. And I hope that you do that and that you enjoy her video as well. Beyond that, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 2, to your reading. So as you can see, the 10th house is here, but what I actually did, all these cards, including some that we'll also look at in a few minutes, were under the 10th house that potentially was what brought you to the reading. But for the ones that were astrology, I actually kind of kept shuffling them without looking and then just laid them out because I wasn't sure whether the 10th house was going to be relevant to this current life, which is what the cards are here, or to the future life. As it turned out, it was the current life, but it could have been either. But otherwise, these were the cards that were under the 10th house that brought you here. And this is to give us a bit of a map or an understanding about some of the key themes of this current life that you're having that will prepare you for the themes of the future life. And we've got some career sort of cards and also some archangel cards to also add to this before we get to the tarot part of the reading. So you're really interesting, I have to say. I get a really strong energy. Like when I look at these cards with the 10th house, which is often about earthly achievements, the powers of the world, and then the greys, I was looking for energies around interdimensional or spiritual sort of energies for these particular cards. The greys are the sort of alien sort of race that may be, in a sense, controlling or connected to the more controlling sort of aspects of the matrix or whatever you want to talk about it with the 10th house. And then we have Uranus, which is sort of breakthroughs and technology and inspiration and revolution and change. And the scientist, I get a sense that people in pile 2, there is something about this life path, whether it's literally that you become a scientist who has a breakthrough idea that helps liberate the world from some of the more controlling aspects of the powers of the world, or whether you are someone who is going to be very, very powerful in the world in one way or another, and you look for a way to break through the energy of that so it doesn't become controlling. So you're very, very aware, sort of at a scientific level, about the balances of energies and that it's important not to become too controlling if you have a position of control and so forth, to always be about revolution and change. You could be an amazing change agent in some way with these sort of things, particularly, say, in corporate, government, or larger organisations doing change energy with a real process and a real understanding of it scientifically. But the other thing that really struck me, that the name that struck me when I saw this, was Elon Musk. And the reason that it did is that that's someone who's very, very powerful within the world, has been incredibly successful sort of materially and so forth, very Uranian sort of energy, very, very much of space and the future, a sort of scientific approach to things, but is also at the moment, I think in his own way, challenging some of the more controlling aspects of the world. So that's the kind of energy of it. It doesn't mean that you have to be like Elon Musk. It doesn't mean that Elon Musk is going to be listening to this reading. I'd be very surprised if he did, but it's more that there is an energy around the powers of the world and having a very revolutionary, different, scientific, clever, really interesting way of breaking through it. So you could literally work in science in some way, but you don't have to. It's the scientist here, I think, is a bit more like that sort of precision and the forensic detail, and the Uranian energy is about being able to bring the change that you need, but in a way that is ordered, but not controlling, and is something to do with your career. There's a very strong career aspect, or the powers of the world aspect. You may have been born into sort of like power or privilege or whatever, and you may in fact break through some of the sort of tendencies of that to actually bring in a more balanced approach. You don't have to. There's just the various ways these energies could play out. But I do think that you will have a very significant career. I do think it will be a career that is somehow connected to change and to the sort of the true order of the universe. And I think that you will be in some way a bit of a warrior against illegitimate control. What that prepares you, doing that prepares you for a very community-focused type role next time around. We have the 11th house, which is all around friends, networks, social networks, all of those sorts of things. And it can be very, very social. So it suggests a very, very social life. You may, in fact, with some of these energies, have a more private life in this sense and a more social life next time. But you're connected to something as a citizen, as somebody who is helping the greater collective in some way. And it's bringing in this case, sort of Neptunian, sort of psychic and dreams and ideals with how that works materially. And I think there we see a connection between scientist and the earth element. I do think that there is something very practical and very much in the material and natural world about what you do here in whatever form that manifests. In the next time round, it's like there's something that you take out to help the community, to help the world, whatever it might be, around better sort of social and economic almost sort of like balance and a more spiritual connection with that. So I think in this life, in one form or another, whether you're there yet or not, but I think at some point you will be in a position of power or around powerful people, and you will be a change energy there. And what you learn from this life, you will take out to help others in the next life, to have a better, more balanced, more community focused, more socially focused, and more spiritually focused life. So that's really interesting. So let's see what other cards we have here. So firstly, just some very basic sort of career energies. Then we're going to have a look at some archangel energies before we get into the tarot. So for this one, growing up and celebrate. Destiny, wow. Perfection, wow. Okay, all right. So before we get to the archangel thing here, growing up, this card can mean a number of things. It could be stepping into your own power. So I think some of you will. I think some of you who've come here may be born into some form of privilege or have connections or networks that you will be able to step into that role. But you will have this very, very revolutionary sort of nature to it. It could also be that you work in some way around maturing things, maturing an organisation and taking it through change, in education in some way potentially, that sort of thing. It's very much though about standing in your own power. One of the real things around this is if you are going to be battling powers that are illegitimate, you need to be able to stand in your own and feel that you can do it yourself, which you certainly can. You've got huge sort of like brilliance to be able to do that. And there will be something around your career that you celebrate. You will be successful. You will accomplish much, and you will, I think, bring in the change because you're meant to do that. I think you're meant to see how power operates up close and personal, and you kind of have to be successful to do that. Over here, there's something destined. What you are going to take out is necessary. In some way, it's necessary for whatever community you're in, the world in general, whatever it is. It's sort of like whatever happens in this life is preparing you for a very important role in the next sort of step of evolution, I would say, politically, socially, that kind of thing. One thing, though, that it is saying to be kind of aware of is not to be too much of a perfectionist. So I think that there is so much brilliance in you that might be your one Achilles heel that Spirit wants you to think about. Once you're taking this out more, once it's not so forensic and dealing with the powers of the world, once it's actually taking a message out and building something to allow things to develop and to get into the sort of intuition, not sit so much in kind of everything has to be perfect. Let's see the archangel energy. So we have Haniel for inspiration. Yeah, inspiration in Uranus. My God, you are amazing, you guys. Like in terms of like your mind must go like 1,000 miles an hour. And we have Haniel again. So we have the same archangel watching over you. Oh, and there's romance there. Maybe this life is a little bit, it doesn't mean that you won't have a relationship here. You could well be in one or be in one, but I think that you are really all about the new, the change, the inspiration this time around. It's because it's preparing you for destiny. But this looks as though you won't act alone. There's also romance, there's love around this, and the Neptunian thing may be the ideal. It could be saying that for some of you that there is like a divine union or a soul twin that is important to what you do here, that you work with in some way, which doesn't mean you couldn't meet them now, but it's like this time around you're much more focused on the ideas and the change and the new. Next time round it's more about community and other people, and so that may be why romance takes a slightly higher sort of perspective. Okay, so let's use the tarot and let's ask firstly, what is your mission in this life? Yeah, so what is going on now? What's the mission in this life that will help prepare you for the next life? Okay, it's interesting we've got the Empress and the growing up. I do think that there's something in this life that's about education, nurturing, mentoring others. It may well be, if you're in a sort of like a powerful position, that you actually do nurture and mentor other people as a part of bringing in the change and so forth. So there's definitely something around that. And and there may be a period in your life too where you step back a bit from all of this to do sort of parental roles and so forth, and that's also part of what you're meant to do in some way if that's the case. Maybe bringing in through children the generations that later on you might meet again when you're sort of reborn, at some other later stage. So there is something about nurturing. There is definitely abundance, and I definitely think you're going to be successful, but there's something in that line. But there's something also about the judgments of the world. So one of the things I think this is saying is that this is why the scientist is important here. The science, because if Uranus was on its own in a very power-oriented thing, it could be crash through or crash. And judgment then would be going too fast because you're very fast. But the scientist brings things into balance. So I think part of this lifetime is to learn about that balance and learn about what is the logic behind things, what's the scientific structure of it in some form or another. And that could be just a psychological structure. It could be a kind of corporate sort of workplace culture structure. It could be, how profit and loss operates. There's knowledge and so forth that tempers judgment and makes you better at making those judgments. Because I think in the next life, when you're dealing with a lot more people, there is a need, and so that you don't become a perfectionist, there is a need to have that kind of grounding. But a lot of what you're doing in this life is working out what isn't working, what is stultifying creativity, what is stultifying new thought, what is stultifying hope. Because we have three cards here, like the star reversed feels to me like you're dealing with the energies, you're pushing back with Uranus against the energies that stop the sort of like the futuristic way of looking things and the progress and the hope. And then Page of Wands and Page of Swords. Both of these things suggest that you have a good creative vision and you have a good mental vision, and they're the fastest moving suits, and that's you're very, very fast. But because they're reversed, what I think this is saying as part of your mission is actually clarifying what this looks like, both for your own next life, but I think for others. I think you have a very revolutionary effect on others in one form or another in this life. So let's ask, how does this really prepare you for the next life? Okay, destiny, the wheel. Yeah, that you're heading somewhere pretty significant, pile two. How it is preparing you, partly is it is proving to you that you have the courage. You have the courage to go up against other people's judgments. You have the courage to go into the powers of the world and to revolutionize and to unlearn and to throw everything up in the air if it's necessary, to sort of like unstick energy and so forth. You are going to be very unconventional because you are very Uranian. And so you're probably very well schooled and all of that sort of thing. But I think that you almost let go of a lot of that. You use the principles like the scientist about how to think things through and how to go through change, but you bring in something that's very new. In this life also, there's going to be a very strong connection for you somebody who has the same sort of like kind of creative passion, the same sort of vision and so forth. So it may in fact be the person, I'm actually getting for some of you that a person that maybe you work with in this life and connect with on that level is actually someone you have a relationship of a more intimate nature in the next life potentially, because it feels like there's something there, and I feel like you maybe actually almost rescue this person from the sort of darker control and bring them into sort of like being able to go forward with their own vision. This may be the nurturing. It may even be that it's a situation where, as I say, there's someone you're coaching or mentoring in some way, and as I say, maybe in the next life it has an even closer connection. You could have a relationship with them in this life too, but there's something very, very important about a relationship next time round. You're also in this uncovering truths, and that's, you're in the belly of the beast. You're uncovering truths with the moon reversed, because that helps you understand how fortune operates. You're learning a lot about how the matrix operates, I think, so that you can actually subvert the paradigm and shift the matrix and free people in many ways in the next life. Okay, so we're going to also ask what you do see at the moment in this life that would be helpful for this, and what you're not seeing at the moment. So 3 cards for what you do, 3 cards for what you're not seeing. So what you do see at the moment. And what you're not seeing. Okay, so this is pretty clear. It's not surprising. I see a conflict card here. I see, potential mental criticism or mental control, and that you see pragmatism. You have a very pragmatic approach to things. Interestingly, with the Queen of Swords reversed, your scientific approach might be somewhat unconventional too. And I mean scientific in a very broad sense. I don't mean necessarily that you're in a laboratory, but you have a real way of looking at things differently and so forth, and you know that. But you also know that you draw criticism, and you know that you are in a situation where there is power dynamics involved. Though you are more than a match for them with the 5 of Wands. 5 of Wands is always sort of petty sort of rubbish. It's not the big ticket conflict and so forth. And you have a very, very pragmatic approach to this. This life you really do understand how power operates, and you take no prisoners, really. What you're not seeing is to some degree what toll this takes on your own sort of mental equilibrium and your own sort of reserves of energy. There's almost like you feel like you have to do it all on your own, because over here this is saying there are others who would, with the 3 of Wands, have a similar vision to you. So what would be helpful is for you to see that, and I think you will. I think if you haven't already, I think there's at least one person who maybe you help and then you realise is actually a peer and can work with you and move it forward. But this is saying that you maybe don't see so much at the moment of the others who would join with you and who see things similarly. So you maybe take a bit too much on. Whereas, and it's good to learn about working with others, because so much of what you're going to do in the next time round is going to be working with others. So now we want to look at some oracle stuff to get some more advice around all of this. So we're going to start firstly with the heart code oracles, looking at relationship, career, lifestyle and well-being for each thing, to see what some of the energies are, what else Spirit wants to talk about. And then we'll move into a kind of transitional couple of sets of oracle cards to take us then towards the spiritual before we bring it all together. So firstly, relationship energy between the 2 lifetimes. Bond. Okay, there is an important relationship this time around too. Whether it's love, it could be just that the same person's going to be with you twice. And stability. Okay. All right. So this almost makes me think that for some of you, you will have this bond with this person, because I think there's going to be a person who's probably in both lives, but whether the bond is necessarily a loved one, I feel like it's more like kind of, working together or being on a mission together. And you may have a sense of it as being more, but maybe there's some reason why it isn't as romantic, or you're just, the 2 of you are just so focused on what you're trying to do in the world that it takes second place. Whereas I think next time round with the romance, there is a very stable love in your life. And I think it's probably connected to someone here, like a soul twin or whatever, but that's actually, you're able to do that more for some reason. And this doesn't mean you can't be in a romantic relationship this time around. I just feel that for some reason it's more at the forefront in the next life, It could very well be the same person, or it could be different people, but you certainly make connections with people, and you're certainly very loyal to people. Let's have a look at career. Change. Yeah, you're a change agent, big time. Investor. Okay, so that tells me that in this life, all this change energy that you have is part of what is an investment really for what you can do in the future, and will bring in kind of people who can see, the people who can see the real material benefits of what you're doing and so forth. So the change energy here is going to be very helpful. It's very interesting because it's change energy here in your career that brings a stability around relationships and investment, like a more stable thing. So it's like, this is the Uranian lifetime. This is earthy. It's in the community. It's sort of building something that's sustainable. Okay, let's have a look at lifestyle. Challenge, yeah. It's almost inevitable with this energy, but there's challenges around it. And reaction, okay. So I think that what this is saying is some of the challenges that you will go through, and you will go through challenges in this life because you're dealing with power. You're more than a match for it, but you are going to have to deal with those. Part of your lifestyle is about dealing with those, and it'll be interesting to see what the wellness card is to help balance that for you. But that is, again, the change and the challenge is teaching you so that your lifestyle, what you do with your lifestyle, is more a reaction to what it is that you're trying to create. So this is a lifestyle where you're kind of in the battle. This is a lifestyle where you are reacting to what you're trying to create in the world. And so it's not as feisty. You don't have to be as feisty, even though I think that you're going to take a message out. It's more, there's more flow to this. It's not, you're not always having to pick up the sword. You know, over here you can just kind of go, oh, that's interesting, and now let me respond to that. Let's have a look at wellness, well-being. Breathe. Yeah, I thought there'd be something. I thought there'd be something that would say that you know, you have to kind of be able to chill sometimes, because there's so much sort of energy around here about change and confrontation when necessary, and your own internal power and so forth. And the next one is throat. Okay, so this probably is a couple of things. I think it's partly pointing to the throat chakra, so communicating your message. It could also be that in the next life, that is sort of something you have to sort of focus on. Maybe, you know, like your voice and how you, maybe even training your voice to be able to sort of give across a particular message or something like that. Okay. So now, as I said, we're going to use a couple of oracles to almost bridge us towards sort of spiritual advice. And the first one I want to use is a deck that has different sort of places of power in the earth, and sort of so for this life and the next. And it could literally be places that you have lived or travel or drawn to in either of these, or it could be just the energies that we're talking about. But I feel like it's got something to do with where you feel at home, or the type of energies that you will feel at home in this life and the next. So we have Sumba Island and Angkor Wat. So in literal terms, we've got Indonesia and Cambodia. So those sorts of areas might be of interest to you, might be somewhere that you live or have lived, might have particular cultural elements that draw to you. But just on a more energetic level, Sumba Island, what it says is, fertility of all kinds is my birthright. I am connected to all the cycles of the land and sky. Healthy fierceness is something to be valued. Be patient, the time will come. So this, I do think that it's saying for some of you, there's a birthright that's taking you into this world, into the sort of powers that be. For others, the capacity to be able to be fierce, the healthy fairness, is really important for what you're doing and how you prepare for the next life. And in the next life with Angkor Wat, it says, I have the courage to live my heaven on earth. There's the Neptune. As above, so below. I am aware that sometimes things must fall apart to be reborn as I wish. So this may be picking up some of the reaction. When you take what you have learnt more out into the community in a sort of different way and ground it, it's less about the fight and it's more about collaboration. There may be cycles that you go through in terms of this, you know, but ultimately you will have the stability because you know that you're sort of grounded to your vision. Okay, so I also want to use a different astrology deck just for some astrology energy for each of the lives before we look at three different ancient culture, sort of mythologies and sort of spiritual traditions. So firstly, some astrology energy for each life beyond what we already had. Conjunction, Sun, waxing crescent, 6th house, 11th house, Neptune again. Wow, very psychic energy around this next life. I will look at what planets we're looking at for the conjunction here. So I'm just going to deal out till I get planets. Uranus. Yep, you're about change, all right. Uranus and Pluto. Oh, big time. My goodness. Part 2. Who are you? Very interesting energy here. So a conjunction of Uranus and Pluto. My God. That's like the two major change agents, the transformative and the new and the brilliant coming through. There's a lot that you're going to do in this world. And Pluto is about the powers of the world. Uranus is about the new and the change energy. You may have very strong connections like this in your chart, but like you don't really have to. This is really just more about the kind of energy around you. It's got something to do with your life path connecting to your sun. You are meant to change things. You're meant to stir things up. And with waxing crescent moon, the main thing that you're meant to be doing at the moment is setting your intentions, knowing what that is, knowing what kind of the moral life, the good life, whatever it is that you are trying to bring in is, because you are powerful, like big time. Over here in terms of this, with the 6th house, it moves to more to being service to others in some way, and the 11th house again, connecting with others, community and so forth, connecting on a kind of psychic level. It's really interesting. It's like you're a big-time spiritual warrior here, and then you are kind of almost a form of community cohesiveness and stability. It's like, you've learned so much. Like, it really is, I think, that it's like evolutionary here, evolutionary and revolutionary, and this is sort of transcendent. It's a really interesting set of energies. So what I wanted to do to finish it off is I want to pull a card for each from Celtic mythology, Nordic mythology and Egyptian mythology, and then we'll finish off with the Astro Chakra cards. So this is a card for each from Celtic energy for you. The Weavers, fate, manifestation, decisions. So yes, there is something fateful about this. I do think that you're going to find yourself in a position to do this in one form or another. And I think that it is weaving the fate into the next thing. It's almost setting the groundwork. It actually feels like tilling the land so that then you can actually plant what you want to plant. And then we have surrender, let go, freedom, flow. Yeah, I think that this life is the battle, the revolution. The next one is like the connection, the surrender, the kind of harvest, so to speak. So yes, tilling the land, and then like let the land kind of develop, and this is the time of surrendering and letting the harvest come in. Let's see what the Vikings, they were pretty sort of courageous types. Let's see what energy between the two lives comes up with that. So we have Fehu and Othala. So Fehu is definitely, because it's about abundance and all of that kind of thing, wealth, possessions. You're definitely going to have some sort of position of power, money at some point in your life if you don't already. You may, as I say, some of you may well have been born into that. And that is about working out what your ambition is and satisfying your ambition. And for you, it's about changing it. It's about sort of ripping through the matrix and making it something better. And I think freeing some other people in the process of doing it. Athila is about sort of inheritance, and it's about letting go of the past. So I do think that definitely in the next life you are not meant to be so much of a battler. You are meant to be someone who is spreading a message, connecting with others, bringing the sort of spiritual sort of side back to it, materially sort of benefiting others and so forth, and just connecting and having the love and all that thing. I just feel like you're really, really busy with change this time around, and next time around you're actually reaping some rewards for that. Okay, let's have a look at the ancient Egyptian energy. So for the current life, we have Sekhmet, change and healing. Change again, my goodness, you people. And then we have fertility and satisfaction. Yeah, you are definitely going to do something that is extremely good for other people and extremely good to sort of deal with powerful issues, and you're going to have a reward for it next time. You are going to be out in the community. You'd never be the type who could just kind of walk away and not care about other people and the issues. But this is a much more community, family, reward-based sort of, and kind of chance to sort of sit back and be a bit more spiritual side of your nature. This life, you are in the battle, and you are healing people, and you are freeing people, and you are taking abundance and turning it and changing it into something that is better. So really interesting. So to finish off, we're going to get 3 Astro Chakra cards for each lifetime to sort of see the kind of planetary and chakra energy that is important in each. Crown Chakra, Third Eye Chakra, Crown Chakra. So there's a very strong spiritual thing underneath everything for you, even though I think you're going to be much more in the kind of material side of things. And then the next time round, but it's why you want to break through this. You would look at, spiritually, you would look at the matrix, or whatever you want to call it, as something that was a bit abominable and needs to be shifted and changed. Next time round, we have the Throat Chakra. Again, the Third Eye Chakra and the Root Chakra. And I think that's more about like being able to have a base and stability and all that kind of thing. So over here, we have, it's like having Uranus and the moon conjunct in the crown chakra. So again, Uranus comes up again, major change, but it's connected to, your moon energy, your spiritual thing. So there is a spiritual underpinning to everything that you're doing here. It's very much in the material world. And it's very much about shifting emotions and so forth, and maybe making people more accepted and freed in some way. And that's your life purpose, and you connect on a very telepathic level with people. It's one of the reasons why you are such a good change agent in whatever way this is. You're very, very powerful psychically. It's just that how it's seen is very much being in the midst of power and dealing with power. Next time around, it's interesting that we have the throat chakra because we had the throat coming up around wellness. There's something about making sure that you use your voice well, because we have the Saturn planet here, so that's about discipline and so forth. Authority. I think you will be authority in your community group, but it's more about the message that you bring and the discipline and the message that you bring, and the inspiration with Neptune in terms of your psychic ability. So you become an inspired leader, I think. And Neptune is also in the sort of base chakra. So there's something about your capacity to inspire others that is going to be part of how you manifest your sense of security and stability, and I think also bring in that romance. So I think this is like an inspired leader in the community. This is a change agent. But you kind of need to be the change agent first so that you are the right sort of leader in the next life. So that's pretty exciting, Pile 2. I hope that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. I do hope you go and check out the other part of this reading with Odessa. It would be really interesting to know how much this energy is showing up in hers, or whether there's a different perspective on it that's helpful, because she's looking at the past life as well. I'm sure that you will enjoy her reading, so I really very much suggest you go there and see that if you haven't already done so. Beyond that, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, Pile 3, to your reading. I just want to actually fix up the camera. It's got a bit skew-if. There we go, that's better. So, as you can see, we have the 12th house here. What I did with these cards, which were the astrological ones, is that I actually shuffled them separately before laying out the rest of the cards. These are the cards that were under the 12th house that brought you here, but I wanted to get a sense about whether or not that energy that brought you here was more about the current life or the next life. And this came out in the shuffling into the next life. And what that tells me before anything else is that the people who've come to this group are very future focused. I basically had in the intent of that part of it that if it turned up in the future, then it suggests that a lot of what you think about and do, even in this life, and what prepares you for the next life too, is about having an eye to the future, having an eye to the next step always. What are you developing into? Very visionary sort of energy. And that certainly fits with the 12th house, and it fits with the sort of thing we have over here. it's really interesting because you've got the 8th house as well as the 12th house. I mean, they're the two weird houses in the astrology chart, I have to say. They're the two really kind of mystical houses. And then you've got Gemini, which is around the sort of sense of communication, understanding the intellect or whatever. But over here in the 12th house, we have the moon. And you're moving from, in this life, being a seeker of answers, a seeker of learning, a seeker of communication, a seeker of depth with the 8th house, a seeker of connection with the 8th house, to the alchemist with the 12th house, which is like a higher order sort of energy around spirituality. If you think of the 8th house as sort of occult learning and all the kind of mysteries, the 12th house is like where it all comes together and integrates and connects with depth psychology and so forth. And so you move from the seeker to the alchemist. So there is a lot in this life that is about spiritual seeking, you know, what different sorts of modalities around spirituality, different sorts of traditions, all of that kind of thing, exploring your psychic abilities, all of that sort of stuff, and communicating and learning about that leads you to a life where you are an alchemist, a true mystic, very spiritually oriented, very connected to the earth, however. In both of them, with the interdimensional energies that we're looking at to sort of try and describe part of that, part of your life. In this one, you are learning about sometimes the darker energies around life, and particularly around, some of you could have very intense relationships that are sometimes controlling. That could manifest sometimes, and if that's the case, part of it is about learning about that sort of thing. But it's also, you know, the Alpha Draconians are the race that, you know, like have a lot to do with the powers of the world here. And so I think that there's something about understanding power dynamics operating there, because it moves into the vegans, which are much more about independence, being connected to the earth, having a kind of a proper approach to things. So there's some learning in this life around power and control. And there's a lot of learning about spiritual sort of beliefs, understanding, knowledge and so forth, which prepares you to be at this whole other level in the next life. So I think, you know, if you've come to the right reading, you are spiritual seekers, definitely, but you are evolving into sort of alchemists, into people very, very spiritually advanced. But what prepares you for that is dealing with it very much in the material world and having to look at some of the sort of darker elements so that you know what not to do. So this is not the reading for somebody who, you know, has spiritual sort of seeking, but just only wants to sort of like only think about positivity and only high vibration. What this is saying is that you will, in fact, look into the depths. You're happy to go into the underworld. You're happy with all of that. You will look at the state of the world. You will look at all of those sort of things. It's quite prophetic, actually. I feel, particularly as I said, there was a future focus for you. I think that there's many sort of potential prophets amongst this group, and certainly maybe manifesting that later. But to do that, you have to connect to the world and you have to look at the world. You can't just go, it's too upsetting. So I think that this is the energy of people whose spiritual seeking is not blinking when looking at some of the sort of the deeper and darker elements. Not to do it. You're not sort of someone who's going to do it, but to learn about it, because you actually want to sort of take things to a higher order and a higher level, and do a lot in your next life around being psychic and so forth. So we also had some other cards here that were under the 12th house. So this is some kind of career cards, career and money cards around the two lives, and then also some archangel energy, just to sort of finish the first map, and then we'll drill into some of the detail about this with tarot. So around career for the current life, got writer and comfort, okay, and for the future, work smart and control. This is very interesting because it's almost the opposite energies. So I think what this is saying is what you learn in this life helps you to be able to not end up in control situation next time, to be able to do whatever you do in your career very smart, very clear, very clean, very separated out of that. But in this life, you have to kind of balance your seeking and your learning with comfort, because you're going to be going into sort of darker areas. You could be someone who wrote about sort of spiritual or kind of like political matters or something like that with these sort of cards, or writing or communication, Gemini, very much part of what you're doing in this life as a way of almost teaching yourself. But you want comfort, and I think that you're going to, on occasion, come up against the sort of control matrix, and you're going to have to look at it. So I think there is a bit of a balance for you, that your seeking has to be for how you can transmute those sort of energies, because you do want to also have a comfortable life, and you want a career that's probably about communication in some way. But I think it's like you could be a journalist and you're going to see how the world runs because of that. And you're also a very spiritual person, so you're trying to balance that out. There's some tension that you're dealing with between those. But it's important for you to do that, because next time round, that means that you are in control rather than having other people in control. And anything you do on a career or material level is smart. You know, it's understanding the system that you're dealing with. It's not being, because with the alchemist, the 12th house and the moon, you could get so removed that, you know, you're almost a Tibetan monk, which is fine if you want to be a Tibetan monk. But I think that for most of you, you're going to be doing something in the real world, or in the material world, but on a very, very esoteric level. But you do it smart, because you do understand what you're dealing with. You have spent time learning that in this life, so that you carry that information and understanding in on an instinctive psychic level that takes you to the alchemist, that takes you to that higher level order thing, and therefore means that you can't be controlled. You may have to deal with somebody trying to control you in this life, in a relationship, an intimate relationship, or in a career situation or something, and you have to toggle between what you're learning and you want to express and the comfort of sort of just staying stuck. So I think there's a transition around relationships, potentially work or love. Okay, let's have a look at the archangel energy. Gabriel, intuition, okay, and Uriel, clearing. Yeah, because I think this is all about learning. And it is all about developing prophecy. Gabriel is, in fact, the archangel of prophecy. So there's something about that with you guys. And I think bringing in your intuition and understanding that, and helping you deal with sort of power or intimacy issues, and knowing what to communicate and how to still be comfortable in that environment. Gabriel is there. Gabriel looks over the moon as well, so getting your emotions in balance, being able to deal with it. I think a lot of you, this sort of power issue may come up in relationships, close relationships of various sorts, rather than necessarily career. But you know, some it could be in career. It just depends on what you do. Particularly if you're a writer, maybe. If you're a journalist or something, it may come up in career as well. Over here, Uriel is all about clearing out energy, and it's very much a change agent with Uranus. So you are brought in to sort of change things. Alchemy is all about transformation and change and so forth. So there's something deeply spiritual, but very connected to the earth in what you're going to do next time. But this is the learning phase. This is coming into understanding who you could be and what that means in the world, so that then you can take it to this whole other level in the next time. So let's get into it with tarot. So let's first of all ask, what's your mission in this life? You know, what is happening in this life that ultimately starts to prepare you for the next life? Not sure if you can hear my stomach rumbling. Sorry if you can. Okay. This life. Okay. Yeah, this is a life about learning about how the world operates, a very pragmatic life with the Fool there. And also so that you don't have to repeat the thing again. You won't have to repeat these energies again, because you are going to get things into balance. So this life is about getting in balance where things are unjust and where communication is not what it should be. And it will be a kind of emotional thing that really triggers this learning and this seeking and this kind of bringing it all together. So whether it's a relationship, an intimate relationship, or feeling emotionally stuck in a career situation, something in this life is going to trigger you to go into the depths, to really seek it out, to communicate your truth, and to break through power issues, and definitely be able to see when something is not legitimate. Using your intuition, really starting to use your gifts in that way. And it's about working out what your voice is going to be the next time around. But you're very, very pragmatic. It's interesting. You probably come across as a sort of very sort of esoteric sort of person, sort of, you know, like in the 12th house, and very private and very mysterious. But you'll also be very pragmatic. You're very grounded because you've learnt this stuff. It's an important thing to learn to prepare you for this more mystical sort of life in the next one. So let's ask how in more detail does this prepare you? I think we've got a bit of this, but let's ask for more detail about how what's going on in this life is helping to prepare you for the next life. Okay. So partly, see, it's interesting we have the Queen of Pentacles reversed and then the Knight of Pentacles. Partly what's going on is I think there has to be something that you dedicated yourself to in this life and then you think it's not what it was meant to be. Whether it's a career situation, business situation, or a romantic situation, or some combination of them. There is something where you're not getting the return on something and you're just feeling exhausted, like you're always giving and giving and giving. It's not just, it's emotionally stagnant. You're not getting the recognition that you should be getting because you're far more balanced than whatever this is, the environment that you're in, the person that you're with, whatever it might be. This is meant to happen to bring you back into connection with your heart, spiritually and more generally. And what would be of service? What do you think being of service is? So it's kind of that you maybe end up in a career where it turns out to be far too political, or you're in a relationship where it's out of balance and you were giving and giving and giving but not getting the return. You need to, this time round, something in what you learn and you start to communicate is meant to bring recognition to you. Recognition of an understanding of what something more balanced is, but also I think literally recognition to you, that you start to get seen and heard in some way for what you're doing, that communication sort of thing with Gemini, because it's preparing you to feel more happy, to be of service to your heart, which is what the alchemist ultimately is. All right, so let's do 3 cards for what you see at the moment in this current life that would help prepare you for the next, and then 3 things that maybe you're not seeing at the moment. Okay. What you are seeing, you know, there's a relationship, a career option, something material that you really should be able to progress. And I think you probably will. I'm not meaning to say this is not going to happen in this life, but I think that you're aware there's something material you're meant to do. There's something that is meant to sort of bring abundance or sort of that sense of security for you. But there are some relationships and issues and work environments or whatever it is around you that is having an effect on your self-esteem and having an effect on your belief in that. That's why I think you go on this sort of spiritual seeking, because you've seen the 8th house thing in one form or another in your life, and you want to bring back your sense of inspiration and bring back the sort of heart energy in a more positive way for you so that you can manifest what you want. And I think you will, because I think that's the journey. I think the journey in this life is to have gone through, as I say, a very intense but not balanced relationship for a while, or been in sort of political or power-oriented environments where you really realise it's not in alignment and you want to do things differently. And this makes you communicate with the sort of Mercury energy and the Gemini energy and so forth, and also to connect to your intuition. I think this is the journey. And you know that in a way. What you don't know is how much you've actually suppressed your own psychic ability, even in doing it. It's almost like Seeker here. It's almost like you read lots of things, you learn lots of things, but you're not necessarily connecting it. Until you connect it to what you want to manifest, you're actually only going halfway there, because you're sort of suppressing some of your own ability, which is significant. Like even now, it's even going to be more in the next time, but even now it is significant. And I think you kind of like want to hide away and keep that very private. And there's a degree to which that will be true next time around too. Not everybody's going to see the sort of mystical side of you, but it's there. With the Ace reversed too, you don't rate your own ideas enough at the moment. So I think there's a sort of thing about part of this learning. We'll get to the point where you no longer feel you have to be a student, that you're actually ready to be the master. And then you'll realise that you've actually underestimated your ability. But it's not surprising, because I think this was actually meant to be a journey. It was meant to be something you went through so that you came to your own conclusions in the end, that you can seek only so far until you actually become, and you'll be at the point to become. Okay, so now I want to use some sort of 3D type stuff, like the relationships, the career, the lifestyle and the wellness, using the heart code oracles for each. And then we're going to sort of segue into things that are more spiritual as well to close out the reading. So firstly, relationship energy in the 2 lifetimes. Confront, yeah. you're definitely going to have to confront certain things, you know, whether it's in work, relationships or whatever, there's something around that. And then chance, yeah, then you're more open to letting things in because you know you can do it. There's sort of like an energy here of being the student, learning who you really are, understanding who you are, confronting the sort of like the lower order energies that are around you a bit. And that proves to you, it proves how strong you actually are and what you can bring into being. And that then allows you to be more open, a little bit more sort of open in a way to relationship and connection and so forth. Let's have a look at career. Boundaries, yeah. Many of you, this is going to be in career. Many of this is going to be around career and needing to have boundaries and learning to have boundaries. Yeah, and then you've got chance and purpose. You move from a kind of a confrontational and a kind of a defensive situation to one where you're sort of really open to your purpose more. But you need to go through this because then you don't trip up there, basically, is what this is saying. Let's look at lifestyle. Evaluation and cycle. Okay, so I think in this life you are evaluating, and you will go through a process of evaluating how your own lifestyle is contributing to this and how what you're learning and communicating can free you from some of it. So it's a learning process. This life is about learning. The next one round you're more in flow because you actually have learned what you needed to learn and you know who you truly are. Okay, and then wellness and well-being. Good health, that's good because you've got quite a bit to deal with. You need to have been dealing with health issues as well. And meditation, oh well, there you go. So you have the good constitution. You are going to be fine with this. It's not going to overwhelm you. It's just that it is a learning phase, but you'll have the good health to support it. And then next time around, because you're so much in the mystical thing, meditation will be one of the main ways that you sort of bring the right cycles in, that you connect to your purpose, and that you know when relationship chance is right. All right, so I said I was going to segue towards the more spiritual side. So what I mean by that is I'm going to start with a deck that has different sort of sacred locations, and it is potentially to show places that you may live or travel to in this life or the next life, but it's also to show kind of the energy about being at home in yourself. Then we're going to look at a bit more astrology, and then we'll use a few other oracle decks to look at different sort of spiritual belief systems and how that could operate for you. So firstly, a card for each of the lives around where you might feel at home spiritually, literally, all that kind of thing. Mount Collab, I think that came out for somebody else. And Volubulus. So Mount Collab is Tibet, so it could be the sort of yearning of the seeker. You may like Tibetan sorts of religious and spiritual traditions or draw something from that, or you may want to travel there, or you may come from there. But what it's really talking about is I am sacred, I am divine, I have humility, I can start anew. So this is a journey where you learn how to free yourself and or others, that you can really see your divinity. This is a lifetime of really coming into that knowledge. Then Volubulus is in Morocco. So again, there may be some connections to that in the next life. But this talks about I am organized and efficient. I weave my spirituality through all aspects of my life. And yes, you would. You couldn't do anything other than that. I can be both creative and prosperous. And yes, you can. So it's the spiritual and the material. And there is a sense here of some sort of civic duty. This is why I sort of have a sense, particularly with the 12th house, that many people may not even know that you're the alchemist. They may not even know that you are very, very spiritually attuned. I think there's something in the way that you work and in maybe in a community that kind of like shows that to the world without them really knowing what they're saying. I think there's something quite private about your mystical journey, and it shows itself here more in sort of like community types of environments and so forth. Let's have a look at astrology energy. So more astrology, not just the ones that we started with, a little bit more astrological information about this life and the next. 8th house, oh yeah, see, yeah, you can't escape it, I'm sorry. 10th house, and a lot of it will be around career. and opposition, and there are things to work out. We'll have a look at what planets are in opposition. Then we have second house, fourth house. So yeah, much more around material outcomes and where you are at home and yourself and community and so forth. And the sixth house, being of service to others. Yeah, there's something. See, the interesting thing, I'm going to go to this first for me about this life, is this life looks like it's incredibly transcendent and incredibly spiritual, but I think it is only some people will know that about you. Most people will see this in the kind of way that you make money, potentially, your connection to family, ancestry, culture, and how you are of service to others. And, ultimately, that is the most deeply transcendent thing you can be. So it's very nicely aligned, but I think it's also very private. Over here, as I say, you can't escape the 8th house. Can't escape Scorpio, I'd say. You don't necessarily have to have Scorpio strong in your chart, but there's a scorpionic energy around you, definitely. And that kind of being able to go into the underworld. And a lot of you, it's going to process through career. With some, it may be relationship, but for a lot of you, it's going to be about career and the powers of the world. Let's have a look at what planets are in opposition. Because opposition can sometimes work well depending upon the planets. Other times it can create a tension. And I do think you are dealing with a tension to get to where you need to be in this life. But let's see what planets are aspecting. Jupiter. That's good. That's benefic. That's helpful. And Uranus, yeah, change. Change is going to be beneficial. That's what you need to sort of understand, I think, because the opposition, if Jupiter and Uranus were operating against each other, it would be like you could never feel lucky because everything was changing. But if you actually let the energy of Uranus come through, learn what you're going to learn from it, change with it, then the benefic energy of Jupiter can actually come into play. Big changes, though, big transformations in this life. Big understandings. That's why you go from, and I do think you're psychic already, as I say, I think you're all very future focused and a bit prophetic. And that's why the 12th house ended up over there. But I think that you're at a particular level now, you're going to jump big time in the next one. Even though, as I say, I don't think most people are going to see as much. I think even in this life, people are going to be more, oh yeah, you're a spiritual seeker. I think you're a bit more private about it, but it's like you're the kind of magician that nobody knows is a magician sort of thing in this lifetime. Okay, so let's have a look at 3 different spiritual traditions. So I'm looking at Celtic, Nordic, and Egyptian, just to sort of see some other spiritual energy between the two lifetimes. So starting with Celtic. The hair, otherworld, shape-shifting, fertility. So this is the other world. You're like Persephone, basically. Look at, if you don't know Persephone's story, look at it. You're able to go into the underworld and come back out. There is something otherworldly about you. So I'm saying you are already very psychic. It's just that it's a kind of a quantum leap into the next one for some reason. Let's see what the Celtic energy has for you in your next life. Dream, manifestation, plan. Yeah, this is the alchemist, being able to bring it into being. This is the time of you're using psychic gifts and all of that sort of stuff, and you're very much able to move into the depths and all of that kind of thing to learn what you need to do. This is accelerated learning path spiritually for you. This is more the manifestation time, which doesn't mean you can't manifest things in this life, because you can. It's at a whole other level next time around. Okay. You're kind of like over here, that's one of your stories I hear about, the kind of person who sort of dresses like a hobo and they turn out to be a millionaire. You're kind of like that around spiritual stuff. I don't think in this life you will be as obvious about it as maybe you are and you're seeking this time around, but underneath it's like a power keg. Okay, let's see what Nordic or Viking energy is between the two loves. Sunstone and Suello. So one of the things that's interesting about this is Suello talks about the sun and seeing things and having the light and all that kind of thing. And I'll get to more of that. But we also have the sunstone here. The sunstone in Viking mythology is a kind of a navigational device. And what it is basically saying is that the sun and that kind of the sense of sort of movement and travel and where you're going, there is always going to be light shed, even if you feel like it isn't. You will always be able to find your way. And it's making me think also of Ariadne's thread, when think it was Perseus went into to look for the Minotaur. Any of those sort of things where you go into the labyrinth, you go into the underworld, any of those things. This is saying you will find your way. And part of your seeking is finding your way. So it is probably remembering stuff you've done before, to be honest, and actually kind of bringing that in, because there's a lot of ability here already, but you have the right navigation. And then that takes you to Swallow, as I say, which is about the sun. It's about wholeness. It's about joy and being at home with yourself. This is a difficult life in some ways. It's not to say everything's going to be terrible, so don't worry about that. But there are some challenges and there's some learnings, but it is accelerated learning for you. And I do think you come out on top. I don't think it's going to overwhelm you at all. But I think it prepares you for this other life. There's a reward associated with this life, I think. All right, so let's also look at ancient Egyptian energy between the two lives. We've got Imset, the air spirit, and Imhotep, temple healing. Okay, so air, that's going back to the sort of Mercury that we had right at the beginning, communication, being able to sort of learn. I mean, air is all about learning, knowledge, all of that kind of thing. So there's definitely, look at this almost philosophically. Look at what you're going through philosophically. It will accelerate things. It goes very fast. It will take you through and navigate you through any of these times in the underworld very fast, and you'll understand it in some way, and I think remember. And then with Imhotep, temple healing, this is a sort of sense of the community again, and ritual, and understanding things, and the healing energy. This is a very, very grounded energy that you're moving into. Okay, so to finish off pile 3, I'm going to pull 3 Astro Chakra cards for each to look at the kind of planetary and chakra energy that's important in this life and in the next life. So we have the heart chakra twice, and the creative chakra. And then over here we have intuition twice, and creative again. Okay, so that's interesting. So for all that you are going to be in the depths, and quite a few of it's going to be in your career, you could in fact do a career, I'm getting, around things like psychology and therapy and so forth, psychotherapy with these sort of energies, and it may be a way you learn and you actually can incorporate some of your spirituality. But certainly there's something about the heart in this. Some of you, it may be a transformative relationship that really gives you this accelerated learning as well. But either way, it's very well aspected. It's like having the Sun and Jupiter conjunct, because they're both there in the heart chakra. So there is great wisdom to what you do, and I think it is saying Jupiter here can actually rule over Uranus in terms of the opposition. And the Sun, and remember we had the Sun as your life purpose. There's some connection between all of this that is about what matters to you in your heart, whether it plays out in a career or in a relationship or in both. And it helps you to transform yourself. This is about transforming yourself, the creative sense, and releasing anything that doesn't work. It really has a very transformative, and that's very 8th house and Plutonian sort of energy again, that takes you to having the Sun and the Moon conjunct, this time in the 6th chakra, which is, your kind of third eye, your psychic connections, your psychic ability. So your life purpose is very much calibrated to that, and to using your intuition and so forth, but it's done with wisdom. So the transformation has occurred here, so that here it's like having Pluto and across the two lives. It's like having Pluto and Jupiter conjunct, but in a kind of a linear progression. So the transformation leads to the wisdom and being able to be honest and clear and true to who you are. There's some subterranean stuff here where you have to kind of find your way through. You have to navigate with the sunstone and transform. This time round, I feel like you don't have to. I don't think you're going to, as I say, show your power that much, but you can be authentic. You can bring that through for other people, and it is part of what you do. So very, very interesting group spiritually. So don't despair if in this life you hit up against things that seem dark or difficult. Don't run away from that by any means, because if you did do that, I mean, we all have free will. If you went, well, I just can't look at all of that, then you're not going to manifest this. That's what that's kind of saying. It doesn't mean you'll have a bad next life, but there is something in this, at this point, there is an opportunity in this life to accelerate your development and lead to being, the magician, the alchemist. So I hope that that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it connects too to what Odessa says in her reading about the past life that's informing this life, and you can see a kind of linear progression or different perspectives about the same sort of thing that's helpful for you. So I very much recommend, if you haven't already gone and listened to Odessa's readings, go and do that to get the full picture. And if you care to share about this, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings.